Hi friends and welcome back to my channel. Today I'll be doing a wrap-up, not really my May wrap-up, but a wrap-up of the challenge I did in May. If you don't know, in May I challenged myself to basically participate in every single readathon, read-along and book club that I came across. By the end of April I started to keep track of the different readathons, book events, reading events I came across within like 5 days I think. And all of the ones I came across I needed to participate in. It ended up being 8 readathons and 4 book clubs. So this has been sort of a 3-part experiment. In the first video I announced the challenge and I started to keep an eye out for reading events. In a following video, I actually planned my entire May TBR, where I tried to make it work, find TBRs for all of the readathons, figure out how to get a hold of all of the book club books that I needed to read, also trying to figure out how my own randomized May TBR could fit and work with the readathons and book clubs I needed to do. And now, throughout the month of May, I have been trying to complete these readathons and books for book clubs. So this is a wrap-up of how I did, my thoughts about it, and also just like strategy things, if I would do it again. We're just gonna chat about how I did I read the book club books, did I complete any readathons, will I do this again in the future, and so on. So I won't really be going in depth about the books themselves, that will be coming in a following May wrap-up at some point. First of all, I need to say I loved this challenge. I loved looking out for the readathons, I loved planning it, even though it took hours. I've had a fairly good experience with the books I read. It's been fun. The first half of this challenge, the first half of May, I was doing great, exceptionally, so good. Second half, there were some books that started to like block my experience. We're gonna chat about it. We're gonna chat about it all. But overall, I've had an amazing experience with this challenge. And I do want to do this again sometime in the future, not every month, definitely not, because that's just a reading slump waiting to happen. Potentially like every quarter, every half a year, something like that. We're gonna see. Let's start by chatting about the book clubs. I needed to read 4 books for 4 different book clubs in May. The first book club I came across was the Rake Appreciation Society, where they read historical romance, a genre I don't typically read. This month's book was The Marcus Makes His Move by Diana Quincy, I believe. And it's actually the 3rd book in a series, but it's sort of that thing where all of the books are standalone, so you can read them without reading the books before. I listened to this one as an audiobook because it was on Scribd, and I really liked it. I was surprised. It was good. It was a solid book. It was a nice, good historical romance. I really liked the audiobook actually, the narrator was great. But also there were some twists to the story that I did not expect. It was a fairly predictable story. It's about some guy, he's a duke or something I think, or Marcus. He disguises himself to become like a servant or something. I'm using the completely wrong words, I know this, but yeah. So he disguises himself because he is on some sort of revenge plot, but then he falls in love with the woman he is serving and it was really good. It was really good. I had a good experience with this book. I would never have picked this book up if it was not for this challenge and this book club, because first of all, I would never have come across this book club or even considered to participate in it. I very rarely read historical romance. I want to read more of it. I don't mind it. It's just not something I typically read. So I don't think I would have ever read this book if it was not for this challenge. So yeah, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars. So that was great. Another book I read for a book club was Confessions for the Literally Dead book club. This is a book that is translated from Japanese. It's about this teacher whose child recently died and she is taking revenge on the students who did it. It's a very quiet sort of thriller, quiet, suspenseful sort of mystery, and it was incredible as well. The twists, the turns, the storytelling, it was so good. It's such a different book. The book is about 200 and something pages, 250. It's less than 300 pages at least, and it's only like 4 or 5 chapters. So the chapters are very long and each chapter is told from a person's point of view. And it's sort of more like a monologue, like they're retelling everything that happened, either through a letter or through a speech or something like that. So it's a really different way of telling a story, I think. I was intrigued. I was curious. So even though it's this very long sort of monologue for each chapter that typically can get a bit boring or feel dragged out, it was good. I really liked it. This is another book I ended up giving 4 stars. And once again, I don't think I would have picked this book up if it were not for this challenge. I do try to read translated books at times, so potentially I could have come across this, or perhaps people would have read this book for this book club and I would have heard about it later. I'm so glad that I read it now. So that one was great. I'm so happy about it. Third book club I was meant to participate in was the Of Witches, Vampires and Valkyries. Once again, a book club I've never heard about before, probably would not have considered to participate in. Their book of the month was The City of Dusk by Tara Sim. It's a very new release. I actually picked this book up because I wanted to read it. Unfortunately, I have not finished it. I started it, I think I read about 2 or 3 chapters, not many pages at all. It's a 500-page long book. I might have read about 20 pages. From what I've read, I am intrigued and I am enjoying it actually. It feels entertaining. I can't really tell you what it is about other than it's high fantasy and that there will be some LGBTQIA plus rep, I think, and they have powers and it's like necromancy, and yeah, I really don't know yet what it is about. And I'm kind of sad that I did not continue with the book, but I'm still glad that I've started it and I'm glad that I own it, and I'm happy that this book club actually encouraged me to read this book. The fourth and final book club is the Enchanted book club, and their May book was The Wrath and the Dawn by Readathon. Another book I have started but not yet finished. I'm 80 pages through the book, so I'm currently reading it. I'm hoping to finish it in June. I started to read it with the hopes of finishing it before the end of May. Didn't make it, unfortunately. And we will get to this, that I sort of wanted to read other things by the end of the month. This is a book I already owned. I would have read it at some point, so perhaps it's not the book club that introduced me to the book or that motivated me to read it or pick it up, but it did make me start it now. I am a bit conflicted about it at the moment. I don't know what I will rate it. I'm not obsessed with it. I find the story a tad bit confusing for me actually. But out of the 4 books I needed to read, I have read 2. Both of those books I have been greatly surprised by, and I've given both 4 stars. I feel like that's a pretty darn great grade for the book club picks. And what's even more interesting about this is that I've never, before this month, actually participated in any of the book clubs that are on like Book Twitter, BookTube, all of that. I've never read a book for a book club until this moment. That is really cool. And the fact that the books I did read, I gave 4 stars and have been greatly impressed by, says something. So this hopefully will motivate me to continue to read book club picks in the future and actually try and be more active in book clubs and read the books for book clubs, because obviously I've had a great experience with it so far. Now with that said, I have not actually participated in any discussions, live shows or anything like that, which was sort of the goal. But the thing is, when I started to plan this, basically none of the live shows were announced, and then I've just forgotten about it. So I have not participated in any discussions or live shows at all. Perhaps I should continue to challenge myself this way and actually make sure I can participate in the live shows and have the discussions about the books as well. That would be fun. So that is something to work on more the next time I do this. Let's now chat a bit about the 8 different readathons I participated in. Insanity, I know. So let's start with talking about the short ones. The first readathon, the short readathon that happened in May, was the Mafia Romance readathon. It was between the 5th and the 8th of May. There were various prompts and stuff like that, but my goal for that one was to mainly read a Mafia romance. And I did. I read Brutal Prince. I started it on the 5th, I think. I didn't end it by the 8th. I think I ended it by the 9th, actually. So I was a day behind on finishing that one. But I did read a full-length Mafia romance book during or for that readathon, which I'm very happy with. The book itself was quite alright. It got better as I continued reading it, and I am intrigued to continue with the story. I am intrigued to read Mafia romances. Mainly I'm just glad I read a Mafia romance during this readathon. The next short readathon was the 72-hour Smatten readathon. This was one of the difficult ones to plan for because there were not really any prompts set. The idea was that there were 2 wheels, one for like lighter tropes, one for darker tropes, and you would spin the wheel and get a prompt from that. On the Friday, I did spin the light prompt wheel, and I got the trope Grumpy Sunshine Romance. So for this one, I actually read Under One Roof by Ali Hazelwood, and this is a novella that is very short, just about 100 pages, I think. I read it within the day, actually. Like, I finished it that Friday, which I was very pleased with. And I really, really enjoyed it as well. I gave it 4 stars. That's the only romance book I read during this 72 hours month and readathon. But still, I read 1 book for this readathon during those days. I'm very happy with that. The final short readathon was Becca's 48-hour book couple-a-thon. This was another one of those that were difficult to plan for. I had a lot of fun participating in the readathon. I watched a lot of the live shows actually, more than I watched last year. And it was very entertaining just to see that and be a part of that and be a part of the community, which I feel like is the main thing with this particular readathon. I did make sure to finish one of my current reads, which was Confessions, during this readathon. So I finished it for the prompt to read a book with less than 300 pages. After that, I picked up City of Dusk, and that's when I read those 20 pages or so. So I tried to keep up with the prompts, but like, I did not read the entirety of Sunday. I'm glad I finished the book during this readathon and that I tried to work with the prompts. Let's now have a look at the 2 week-long readathons I participated in. The first one was Readathon. It isn't technically a 2 week-long readathon, it's actually a month long, but the thing is, it already started in April, like halfway through April, and went on until the 14th of May, when the Eurovision finale is. I only participated for the second half of Readathon, but I managed to squeeze in, I think, 3 books for this one, which is actually surprising. I read The Winners by Fredrik Backman, which is the 3rd and final book in the Readathon series. I had started it last year in November. I had read about 200 pages, but it's like 700 pages long. I continue with it now, finished it, very pleased with that, and I counted that for Sweden. I also listened to the float plan, where I could count the book for Germany, because I think the main character's mother was originally from Germany. And I also counted Brutal Prince for Italy, because hey, Italian Mafia. I got 3 books read for Readathon, and I'm very happy with that. Next 2 week-long readathon I participated in May was the final book support group readathon, from the 1st to the 15th of May. And it's all about continuing with series or finishing up series. I had like 2 books in mind that I wanted to read for this readathon. I only ended up reading one of those, which was The Winners by Fredrik Backman. First of all, that book will probably be my favorite book of the year, so like an amazing read, an amazing experience, and I'm so glad that this readathon actually pushed me to pick that book up and finish it. I don't know why I was ignoring that book. Because of that, I'm still so happy about this readathon, and it did make me, like, in the planning process, also consider the series I was currently reading, have a look on my bookshelves, like if I had any final books in series and stuff like that. I feel like this one was pretty darn great as well. We then have the month-long readathons. First of all, we had Desertathon, and like the prompt planning for this one went great, because I could basically squeeze my entire randomized TBR into my Desertathon TBR. Out of the 5 books I had planned to read for this readathon, I ended up reading 2 and starting 2. So the books I read were Bunny for Wild Card, and also The Winners, once again, for short title. The 2 books I started were The Wrath and the Dawn for Enemies to Lovers, and also The Ruin of Kings for red cover. And I feel like The Ruin of Kings ended up becoming The Ruin of Me. The Ruin of Kings is this book. It's an incredibly chunky book. It's about 700 pages, and I wanted to make sure, this is one of the books that were randomly picked for me. I would not have picked this myself, but it was on my randomized TBR, so I needed to read it, and I wanted to really motivate myself to read it. So I ended up putting this one on as many TBRs as I could. I put it on my Desertathon TBR, I put it on my Medievalathon TBR, like I really wanted to make sure I would read this. I have read exactly 100 pages actually. It's been a struggle. I think I started reading this one during the second half of May, and I feel like this probably ended up being one of the greatest blockers in this challenge for me and in this May TBR thing. I am intrigued by the story, but at the current moment it's not that exciting. It is a bit confusing. I want to continue with it. Hopefully I can finish it during the summer at least, that's the goal. Final book I had on my Desertathon TBR was This Woven Kingdom. Never even got to that one. I did half good, I guess. Next month-long readathon was the Asian readathon with 5 prompts. I ended up counting confessions for 3 of those prompts. I could use it for a book about a woman and or an older character, also for an Asian author, it's a Japanese author, and also for a book with a high rating. I think it has a fairly high rating on Goodreads actually. I tripled up on this book and used it for 3 out of the 5 prompts for this readathon. The other 2, my plan was to finish the Wrath and the Dawn. Didn't complete this readathon either. The final readathon I participated in May was the Medieval-athon. A readathon I probably would not have participated in unless I was doing this challenge, but it was so much fun to plan the books for this readathon actually. I was supposed to read 5 books, I ended up reading 3, so more than half this time at least. The first book was to read a book with a great first line. For that one I counted the winners because it has a great first line and page. The next prompt was to read a book with some sort of travel element in this. For this one I counted Float Plan because they go sailing. Third prompt was to read a book with a character's name in the title. For this one I counted Bunny because all the characters call themselves Bunny and the book is called Bunny, so that's the closest I could get with the books I have. But then once again, the 4th book I was supposed to read for this was The Ruin of Kings, aka The Ruin of Me. And the 5th book I was supposed to read was something else, like none of the books I've even mentioned. And those were all the readathons I tried to participate in May. What is my review of this? And also, am I allowed to draw any book buying prompts? I'm gonna need your help with this one, because the thing is, I have a book buying game where I have some rules that if I finish a readathon, I'm allowed to draw a book buying prompt. So basically, if I complete reading a group of books I've set myself out to read, and I do that, I'm allowed to draw a book buying prompt and buy a book that matches that prompt. I didn't finish Asian Readathon. I didn't finish Desertathon. I didn't finish Medievalathon. So I'm not allowed to draw any books for that. Book club picks don't really count. Although I think if I would have read all 4 books for the book clubs, it would have counted as my extended TBR. I did not finish my randomized May TBR because I had Ruin of Kings on that one. Also This Woven Kingdom that I never got to. So I did not complete that. But what do I do with the short readathons? That's the question. Should I just like add them up and say I completed all the short readathons? This is where I don't know what to do, so hopefully you can let me know what you think. Because I did read 1 book for the Mafia Romance readathon, which was my goal. I did read 1 book for the 72 hours Smatten readathon, which was my goal. I did complete a book for Vocabulathon, although I said my goal was 4. Obviously we're not anywhere close to that. I did read a book for each short readathon that I participated in May. Should that count for something? Should I be allowed to draw a prompt? I don't know actually. I never took this into consideration when I did my book buying game. Eurovisionathon I didn't really have any goals with. Final support group didn't really have any goals with. But once again, I did read books for Eurovisionathon and I did read a book for the final book support group. So perhaps if I just combine those 5, am I then allowed to draw a prompt? If enough of you tell me that I'm allowed to draw a prompt, I gladly will. If you argue against that, completely fine as well. So that's kind of how I did with each individual book club and readathon. Now for the question, will I ever do this again? I kind of answered it already, but yes, I want to do this again. It was so much fun to look out for reading events, to plan it. Like planning a TBR is one of the best things. Honestly, I think all of you agree actually, that planning your TBR is great. It's actually reading your TBR that is the difficult and sometimes not so fun part. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. And I feel like I was doing so great during the first half of May. I definitely did. Like, I think I read 6 books during those first 2 weeks. And they were long books. And they were good books. And they were books that I could use for all of those prompts. It's by the second half of May that I sort of started to not slump in my reading, but slump from the readathons. That's when I hit this break. And I also wanted to read other things for like other reading vlogs I have. I still read a lot in May and I finished like various audiobooks and physical books, but that reading did not match my challenge, I guess. So that's where it became a bit tricky. I love this challenge and experience. I had so much fun with it and I definitely want to do it again. I'm not doing it in June. I'm probably not doing it in July. Possibly in August or September. We're gonna have to see. But I think I will try and make this a thing whenever I feel like I have the time, because it's definitely a commitment. I would love to know what you thought of this challenge. Have you followed me in this challenge? Have you seen those previous videos? What do you think of this wrap up? And do you have any, I guess, pointers to what I could improve or change to the next time I do this? Please let me know, how can I improve this challenge and how I share it with you guys. I'll also make sure to make a proper May wrap up of the books I read. I'll talk about all of the books more in depth in a future video coming sometime in June. I don't know when, we're gonna have to see. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please take care and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!
You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes after or what came